Hi guys, great to have you back on the channel. Um, you join me here in the middle of my practice, and since I figured no one really wants to sit and watch me practice, A, probably because I'm not very good, and B, because there's a dog here. Hi Dex. What you doing, buddy? Yeah, he doesn't like my playing either. Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously I'm just going to be sitting doing scales and crap like that. So that's no fun. So today I'm going to talk about my top 10 favoriteest of all time instrumentals. And some of these are from the metal genre, some of them are kind of outside of the metal genre. Most of them have a bit of a heaviness to them. So some of them might be like, I don't know, borderline cases, but you know, they have a heaviness to them somewhere. They're not completely unrelated to metal. So, yeah, at number 10 is Miasma by Ghost off of Prequel. Um, for me, this is just like, it's just incredibly atmospheric. I saw them, this is like one of the tracks that I guess sold me on the band. I saw them at Slane Castle in Ireland, opening for Metallica, and they played it. And yeah, I just thought it was really rocking. Really like it has a lot of like momentum behind it. It really builds up, simmers down, and builds up again really well. So like the pacing of the track is really good, and it's just got an epicness to it that I like, and that's something I like in an instrumental. So let's go ahead and play some. By the way, if you want to demonetize this or send the royalties off to the artists, by all means, please do. I really wish they would get the royalties. So my channel's not monetized anyway, so what do I care? Anyway, so here's Miasma. Okay, so at number 9 on the list, we have Call of Cthulhu by Metallica. And back in the day, this would have been way higher on the list, but then the list would have probably been filled with like, I don't know, 40% Metallica instrumentals. But I listen to a lot more instrumental music now than I did back then, so it's bumped down the list a little. But it's still, I mean, that's out of a lot of instrumentals, it's still in the top 10. So yeah, love this track. It's incredibly atmospheric, particularly like the opening with the kind of sound of the, like the wind sound blowing, with the clean passages on guitar, opening it up, and really love the kind of middle section where there's a kind of breakdown, which kind of runs into the guitar harmonies, and yeah, it just really builds to like a really epic crescendo to finish, and then comes right back down to like a whisper at the end. I really like that. So it's got really great dynamics on it. So I'll play that section, just that kind of section. That would be my favorite section, I suppose. At number 8, we've got Scarified by Paul Gilbert. And this is just, it's one of the most incredibly rocking instrumental songs that you could come across. It's just got a super, super cool, catchy, fast riff that's like ripping and has like cool, like, pinch harmonics. It's just, yeah, total awesomeness. I think my love of Paul Gilbert is one of the things that opened me up to bands like Children of Bottom, right? Alexi Laiho's playing, particularly in like early Bottom, where there's a lot of like these cool like harmonic flourishes within his riffs, and they're already fast and kind of really fluid and rocking riffs. So yeah, and then there's this really cool sort of like neoclassical section in it as well. So probably play just from the main riff and maybe that middle section as well, just so you can get a listen to that. Highly recommend you check it out if you haven't heard it before.
Take it away, Marco!
nobody wants to listen to that all day. Why would you? My poor neighbors. At number 7, we've got Liquid Tension Experiment with Acid Rain. Well, I have a lot of favorites from them, but Acid Rain it's it's like one of those tunes. Like they start off there's a famous show on YouTube, Liquid Tension Experiment live in New York, and they start the show off with it, and it's just it's a really great opener. It just kind of it lets you know that these guys are going to throw down, and it's going to be awesome. All right, so I think we'll just play the opening really because it's the best way to start. Right, at number 6, we've got Building the Church from Maestro Steve Vai himself. This, for me, it's not only is it epic, but it's kind of dark and mysterious in some ways. It's again, it's a very atmospheric tune. Plus, who can deny the amazing odd time signature tapping, double-handed tapping line that, kicks off the song. But I don't think that's the only piece to marvel at. The whole tune is just unbelievable. It's just got, great musicianship as you'd expect from Steve Vai, but everything from like the tones, the reverbs and stuff that are used, the delays, everything. The entire soundscape is just, it's incredible, and you can really get lost in it. And every time you listen to it, there's little nuances, new things that your ear can pick up in it, and totally awesome. So, Building the Church by Steve Vai. number 5, we've got Mindstorm by Joe Satriani from the record Strange Beautiful Music. When this record came out, really blew me away, and it really blew a lot of musicians away, I think, when it came out, particularly the people I was hanging out with at the time. And it's just so musical. The whole record is just, it's like, oh God, it's one of the easiest records to listen to for anyone. Even if they're not a guitar head or a musician, you can put that on, and even though there's some really badass playing on it, it's not like widdly diddly. It's not typical widdly diddly, yeah. And that's, for me, that's what Joe Satriani does. You know, he just writes cool music, and within that, there's some excuses for him to kind of let rip sometimes. But yeah, this particular track is, it's played on 7-string for a start, so it's got a real like low, growly kind of main verse section riff, which is really cool, and the drums are just like in the pocket and really thumpy, but the guitar solo is something to behold. It really, he does some really cool, like almost like kill switchy type stuff, and with what sounds like a slide, or maybe a half slide. I'm not sure how he actually pulls it off. Haven't seen him play it live. And then it kind of goes into this really like cool arpeggio section, and then it just takes off and soars, yeah, into the heavens. So here we go. I'll play that the verse section, and then we'll go straight into the kind of mid section of it. Next on the list, we've got Instrumentally by Dream Theater. So this is like, it's not actually one particular song. It's a bunch of instrumental stuff strapped together from various Dream Theater albums, but it also includes a couple of things from Liquid Tension Experiment as well. And for whatever reason, for me, it's like the perfect stringing together of sections. And it's an incredible live performance. I particularly like watching the drummer Mike Portnoy, the original drummer, and founding member. I particularly like watching his drum angle through the performance, although you could do the same for any of these guys and have a good time watching that. But Mike Portnoy he's a dream to watch. Just a real pleasure to observe someone play like that. He's very fluid. He hits hard. He works the shell of the drum. And I think his drums sound really. There's a human quality to them, which I think is quite hard to replicate. Sometimes people can sound a bit clinical, yeah, when they're really proficient, and he doesn't. He sounds really dynamic. So I really like that about this. So I'll play my favorite section. It's kind of in the second half, kind of heading towards the end, where it all sort of it's been really frantic, and it all sort of comes right down into a section from Hell's Kitchen, I believe it is, and I think it's really really cool. Particularly like the sort of bell sounds coming from the keyboards as well. Reminds me of like tubular bells and stuff like that growing up. So it's the prog side of me talking. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. Okay, kicking in at number 3 is Fear and Wonder from Dimmu Borgir. This is the closing track on Puritanical Euphoric Misanthropia. And it's quite slow paced, but it's very symphonic, really epic. It's, for me, one of the best album closers ever written. Um, Second only to probably Damage Incorporated, but that's obviously not an instrumental, but still, it's a damn good closer to a record. But uh, Fear and Wonder, it's it leaves you wanting more. Yeah, in the end, it's very simple. It's a very simple piece of music, but it's just incredibly well orchestrated. The mix is just perfect. It sounds so powerful. The band is sounding full and punchy, and the orchestra is perfectly mixed in, and the score really complements what's going on with the band. But I think one of the reasons it works so well is because the band is playing something very simple. It leaves a lot of room for the orchestra's instrumentation to to work with. So all the embellishment comes from the kind of string section of the orchestra. Um, but it's just such a full and mighty sound, and the way it fades out at the end, yeah, it just kind of leaves you there, going, yeah, I'm ready for the next one. So here we go, Fear and Wonder from Dimmu Borgir. Number 2, Stream of Consciousness by Dream Theater. This is the second last track on Train of Thought, and It really mimics, well, I should say that I probably end up really mimicking some of the stuff that goes on in this type of track in some of my own writing and playing. I particularly like John Petrucci's clean sound in this. It's really simple. It's just a guitar through an amp kind of sound, but just really quality sound. Really careful control of the dynamics of the guitar. And when the band kind of kicks in, it's just got balls behind it. But it's got some of my favorite grooves from Mike Portnoy in it. And there's a section where it really sort of picks up, the sort of middle section of it really picks up and the playing starts to get really intense. And there's what can only be described of the mother of all drum fills. Mark Portnoy is like one of those guys that back in the day, he wasn't really known for his fills. He was known for his grooves, if that makes any sense. It was the stuff he was doing the whole song through that people were like, oh, that's really cool about him. But this is one of those times where he plays a fill that's just like, holy shit. Yeah, so I'll play you a couple of different excerpts from that song, and but one of them is definitely going to be that fill because it's pretty spectacular. Okay, last but not least, certainly, is at the very number one spot, the undeniable, the completely infallible Orion from Metallica, from Master of Puppets. Again, this is a song that's, second to last on the record. But it has, the reason why it's number one is, first off, Master of Puppets as a whole is like almost a perfect record, as far as metal is concerned, and thrash metal in particular. The mix is really cracking. The guitar is really powerful, drums really powerful. It's really atmospheric. It doesn't sound dead and dry, particularly for Metallica. It's it sounds live. Bob Rock made the comment that he thought that they hadn't achieved a record that honestly showed their live sound, and I'm not entirely sure I agree with him, because when you play Master of Puppets, when you turn that album up and you play it, from the footage I've seen of them playing from that era, it's a pretty accurate representation of how they sounded live, in my opinion. But anyway, not to take away from what Bob was saying, I think I understand what he was trying to get at, which is that they could make it bigger, but I think Master of Puppets does a pretty good job. Anyway, Orion, I think it's really smart, it's really clever. It's, the bass parts, that when you're young and you don't know much about music and you're not experienced, there's stuff in there where you don't know who's playing what necessarily. There's stuff that you think is bass that's guitar, and there's stuff that's guitar that, or that you think is guitar and it actually turns out to be bass. Um, and it's easy to say that looking back, now that I know how it was done and my ear is better, but when I was a teenager, I really couldn't figure out how they played it. Um, Plus, I also think this is a case of like Lars Ulrich showing his class, um, which he does have inside of him, but he can just be a bit of a Lars, really, can't he? Um, but this is an example of when you hear him complaining about like in some kind of monster about grooves being too stock, too standard, and just doing something just to kind of jazz it up a little and make it a little different, a little less of what people would just expect, but without making it awkward as fuck like some of the other stuff he's done. So like in To Live Is To Die, the instrumental of And Justice for All, in my opinion, that's like a step too far. It just sounds a little like awkward. I still love that track. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking it, but it's not as good as Orion. And I think the reason is because Orion, although it has some kind of like cool, it has a cool like in the verse section, a cool like bass drum turnaround at the end of the bar. Um, and it's not odd time per se, but it's a clever like flip the groove around so that it's like you play the groove and then you kind of mirror it backwards almost. So you start the way you finish, if that makes sense. So normally maybe you finish on the snare drum, instead you finish on the bass drum and start on the bass drum where you left off. Um, and it's a simple thing, but it's smart and it's clever and it doesn't take away from the flow of the overall riff. Um, and I think that's one of the main things. So like the verse riff is something you can really like get into and like bang your head to. And then the solo sections and the harmonies, obviously they will speak for themselves. And I think it's just it's um, the legacy of that track and what it means to people, and still to this day, how many people kind of really like hold up Cliff Burton as this bass genius and orchestrative mind. I think that Orion is really testament to that. And there's a flavor in Orion that I wished Metallica would get back. And they showed some glimmer of that in Hardwired, but most of the record is very Sabbathy. In my opinion, it's quite Sabbathy. Some of it's a bit Maiden, and that's cool. But there's a musicality of what they achieved on Master of Puppets that leans on these like neoclassical elements a little bit, and I'd really like to see them get back to that, ideally. So yeah, I'll play you out with Orion, and I'll see you next time.